I'm live. That's what it says anyway. So I'm going to assume that it is not lying to me. Hi, I'm Jamie Sands. Welcome to my channel. I have a channel now. I've been doing some live stream writing sprints on Gillian St. Coburn's channel, and she's given me the confidence to try this out for myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the first chapter from my book, Overdues and Occultism. It is part of the Witchy Fiction Project, which is basically a group of New Zealand authors. We all got together last year at the start of COVID and decided we would all write cheerful, witchy stories, novellas, so it's nice and short, set in New Zealand. So each book has a witch protagonist. They're all optimistic. There's bad stuff happens, but nothing too bad. And there's a little romance as well. My one is a gay romance. It is also about a library witch, which you can kind of tell from the cover. We've got a stack of books and some books behind there. I used a lot of my experience working as a public librarian to inform some of what happens in this book. So without further ado, here is chapter 1, Overdues and Occultism. You're borrowing the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe again. Basil felt his heart warm as he smiled at Hemi over the counter. The boy, who was in the library most days, grinned up at Basil with a look of pure mischief. Yeah, I like it. He slipped his battered library card towards Basil for scanning. You know there are other books in the series, right? Basil teased, because this wasn't the first time he had had this conversation with the boy. I know. I don't mind the boat one, I guess, but this is still my favourite. Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Basil said thoughtfully. You know, there's another book you might like, about kids who go through a door into another world. It's called The Half Men of O, and it's a New Zealand book. It's about going through into a fantasy world like this one. But it's harsher than Narnia, perhaps. It gets quite scary, but you might like it. Could order it in for you. Hemi's eyes had grown wide as he described it, and he showed all of his teeth in a smile. Of course. Basil swiped the battered copy of C.S. Lewis's classic and slipped the return date slip in the front of the book. There you go. I'll order the other one for you. It's okay if you don't like it. I just think you could give it a try. Thank the book gently, reverently, as if it was the most precious thing in the world. There weren't a lot of children who made their way into the Mount Eden Library right after school, but the ones who did were always gems, in Basil's opinion. Some of them were very quiet and shy and sneaked food in against the rules, and some were like Hemi, looking for an escape, not being too careful of the noise they made. Basil left books on display where the shy ones would find them. Books of adventure and bravery with the brightest, most intriguing colours. Books that showed them the wider world and people overcoming troubles. He smiled, turned back to the screen, and put in a request for the copy of The Half Men of O, and then the sequel, Priests of Ferris, as well, just in case he liked it. Outside the large front window, a double-decker bus trundled up Mount Eden Road, and Basil gazed thoughtfully at the Belgian bar over the road. Maybe he could go and have dinner there tonight. A shiver went down his back as his door charm alerted him to a new visitor. His eyes flicked to the library door because the charm didn't activate if it was someone who'd been in before. Someone who'd never visited the library before wasn't unheard of, but it wasn't terribly common either. Mount Eden residents stayed close by, and the library goers were always loyal. Still, people did move to the area, and sometimes couriers came in the front instead of using the service door in the back. The newcomer wasn't wearing courier uniform, though. The young man, Basil thought of him as young, even though he couldn't have been more than 5 years younger than Basil's 31 years, approached the service desk. He had a sparkling aura around him, conveying something very enthusiastic and energetic to Basil's eye. His hair was dark and had a bit of curl to it, and his skin was warm, tawny brown. He had a fine-looking tan leather satchel over his shoulder. Hey there, the young man said. He had the bright eyes of the well-caffeinated, or possibly of an obnoxiously peppy morning person. Basil suppressed a sigh, because it was bad for customer service, and pasted an expectant smile onto his face instead. My name's Sebastian. I was hoping I could talk to you about permission for filming in the library. Filming? Basil repeated, surprised. He had expected the man to ask for the newest issue of Men's Health magazine, or maybe the latest thriller about some tall white man who had to save the world by kissing a girl and then blowing something up. Yeah, it's just, here. The young man, Sebastian, dug in the back pocket of his skinny grey jeans and produced a business card, which he handed to Basil. I have this web series on YouTube. It's called Spectre Watch. And basically, I film all these haunted places or places with stories around them. Can I film here? Basil blinked, looked at the card to see the word Spectre Watch shining back at him with some kind of holographic foil letters. Should have been tacky, but actually it was rather appealing. Underneath was Sebastian's full name in plain black. Sebastian Black. You think the library is haunted? Basil tried to keep the amusement out of his voice, but he wasn't entirely sure he'd succeeded. I think there's a chance it is, but I don't know for sure. Old buildings like this, what is it, 1920 or so? They often are. Sebastian flashed his teeth at Basil in a warm smile and looked around the room. It's beautiful. Even though he thought of it as his library, it was local council owned, of course. However, Basil was the only senior librarian in the branch. He worked there most hours out of everyone, and he'd been working there since he'd got a job shelving books a few hours a week as a teenager. The library had been there before Basil, and he was paid to be there, so although he had a claim on it, it wasn't technically his. All the same, when Sebastian said the library was beautiful, it felt like he was complimenting Basil, and he felt warmth spread through his chest and into his cheeks. Thank you, I quite agree, he said. And then something occurred to him, and he felt he had to ask. There's nothing, you haven't heard urban legends about this building, have you? Basil's unease started in his stomach with a queasy sort of feeling, and then it moved up into his chest as a tightness. Was he about to be found out? Were there children telling stories of weird or even magical things happening? Was this handsome young YouTuber about to do an expose? Which found in Mount Eden Library. More news at 10. Excuse me. He swallowed to keep his composure. What? Oh, nothing huge, Sebastian said. He gave Basil a reassuring smile. It's just that a lot of these old buildings, they have a lot of history, you know. He gestured at the wall and grinned. More often than not, if you come into an old building after dark, put out an EMF and record sound and video, you might find something. It might be a weird voice or a shadow that doesn't make sense. You just never know until you try it. Sebastian's smile hadn't wavered. In fact, it had got more enthusiastic. He looked hopeful, and his eyes were bright and hazel, and Basil's fear had taken a back seat to Sebastian's enthusiasm. It triggered Basil's own need to be helpful. His job was to answer questions just like this, after all. Right, well, I'd need to ask about permissions. You'd want to film after dark, then? Sebastian nodded. But anything you can would be brilliant, honestly. Thank you. I'll have to check and find out. You'll need one of the library staff to stay behind and let you in, observe, and Basil stopped before he said, make sure you don't steal anything, because it seemed impolite. He cleared his throat. We'll need to let security know you'd be here after hours as well, I suppose. I'll make some calls. Thank you. Sebastian acted as if Basil had just given him a puppy on Christmas morning. Basil couldn't help but smile back at him. Why don't you take a seat and I'll ask right now. I'll let you know what I find out. Great. Perfect. Thank you. Sebastian took a breath, clasped his hands together and grinned. I'll be around. Don't leave the library. Basil felt his cheeks warm for no apparent reason as he gazed at Sebastian. Inexplicable. Understood, Sebastian said. Basil went in the back to get Megan. Would you mind taking over desk duty for a bit, dear? I have some calls to make. Sure, Baz, Megan said, winking at him. She called him that purely because they'd known each other, worked together for 5 years, and she knew he hated it. Megan was one of the people who only worked a day a week, or something to do. But she was an absolute dream with the older folks, with endless patience for explaining how the computer catalogue worked and explaining why they didn't still use the cards. Hey, do you think you make it to quiz night this week? Oh, probably not. You should really get out more, Baz. All this time alone with books isn't good for you, you know. He half giggled, uncomfortable, in response. She bustled out to the front desk, and Basil picked up the receiver on the landline and dialed the team leader. And that's it for chapter 1. You can see there's a nice little icon at the end of each chapter with a little stack of books on it. So, hope you enjoyed that. If I get lots of good responses and stuff, I might read some more for you. I'd like to do the first chapter of The Other Side of the Mirror and maybe some readings from This Unusual Life. And tune in tomorrow. I'm probably going to host a live stream on writing sprints on this channel, if I can make it work. Fingers crossed. Otherwise, check out Gillian St. Kevin. Her channel is where we do lots of sprints. Really good if you're doing anything creative and just want some company. And that's it for now. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that cool stuff. Because I'm a YouTuber now. No, I don't really know what I'm doing. So it'd be good to see you. Catch you later. I don't know if it stopped streaming. I think it's broken. Oh no, what do I do? I should say this book is available everywhere. It's on Kobo and Amazon and not Google Play. It's on everywhere else that you can think of. I don't know how to end the stream now. So that's fun. I guess I'm just going to sit here awkwardly.